Hello everyone. We are with the part of communication. You're in the basic model of communication, and in this module, I actually would like to explain to you the basics of communication and some of the basic models. Let's start with an interesting sentence that I came across and that I really like. It says, "It takes a year to establish a strong and solid relationship, but sometimes it simply takes one word to destroy it forever." And I think this is what we need to focus on when we speak about this topic on communication. It's really about how we communicate with each other and what we know about it. So this module is about giving you knowledge on how to communicate, some basic knowledge that you will use with the children, with the parents, and also with the team colleagues. You can use it with your family members, with whomever you have around. So let's speak about some of the basics. Communication is constantly present in our lives, but it requires skill training. Yeah, so not everyone can simply communicate perfectly. You might have come across people who communicated better than other people. It was easier to understand. It was easier for them to convey a message. But when you get to know the person a lot, maybe you understand that they did some study on how to communicate and they got some skill training on communication, and this is what it is all about. Skill training can be consciously, can be unconsciously. We learn a lot about trial and error. We try something, but then it doesn't work out, so we have miscommunication and we learn out of that. But then there are also these tools, these models, which are old, which are ancient, but also which are from the last centuries, which have been found by scientists, by different kinds of people who focused on communication that we can use. And I'd like to introduce one of these to you. To make communication a success, we need to pay attention to the way how we communicate. For professional or any professionals working with people, doesn't matter if with children or with adults, a good set of communication skill is a must requirement. So please pay attention to the topic on communication. Okay, let's speak about different models of communication. The first that I'd like to introduce to you is the idea of the sender and receiver. So we have a sender and we have a receiver in communication. It's called the sender and receiver model. It was developed by Claude Shannon in 1948 with an introduction by Warren Weaver, or Weaver, I think you pronounce him, who both worked for the Bell Telephone Lab in the United States. And this model is referred to as the mother of all models in communication, which have been found under the idea of helping people to communicate better. What we need to understand is that Shannon and Weaver together, their job actually was to make communication better, also in regard to communication with telephones. And telephone was just coming in and phoning each other, and it was really important to say, okay, what is important on the side of the sender? What is important on the side of the receiver? So this concept has the basis there where we say there's a sender and there's a receiver. So a sender-receiver model. It's the simplest communication model we can use. The sender has an idea or concept she wants to transmit. So let's say you want to call someone. If you have the idea of calling someone, there's a message that you want to give. There's an idea of what you want to tell that person on the other end. So this is where everything starts and where it comes from. The sender is also often called the communicator. So sometimes you find this model on the communicator-receiver or sender-receiver model. The sender is the one who transmits the idea or the concept to an individual or a group of people. And this individual or the group of people is called the receiver. So we have the sender and we have the receiver. Communication involves transmission of verbal and non-verbal message. So that is important to understand, that there is a verbal communication going on, but there's also non-verbal communication going on, which is the body language, the gesture, but there's also the intonation of the voice. So on many levels. So there are some interesting numbers that I would like to give you. It is said that 55% of our communication happens through body language. So most of our communication is through body language. The younger person, the more the body is used. A 1 or 2-year-old child uses 80% of the body language because it's the only one of the languages the child has. When we speak about body language, we speak about body. We speak about the face, the gesture, what we can see, the hands, the movements, gestures, all of that, and especially also the face. How does it look? Does it look exciting? Does it look sad? Let's say, today is a beautiful day. Very neutral statement. But if I say, today is a beautiful day, it makes a different information. If I say, today is a beautiful day, it's a different message. So the question, the sentence is always the same. The information, the idea, the concept is the same, but the idea is actually invigorated by different things. One is by the body language. What is there for the body language? The second important part is ,38% of communication happens through intonation. It's the pronunciation, how we pronounce something. It's how we use the voice, how the voice models what we say. So this intonation, it stresses certain words, it puts an emphasis on something, and it communicates something to you. So body language and intonation, two really important parts. So what you need to understand is, when you collect that together, you make a summary of that. That's 93% if you're there. Means 93% of our communication happens through body and voice. Body language, including the face and the gestures, plus voice. So there's only, be aware about that, 7% left for the words. Only 7% of what we say, what verbally comes out, is what is received by the other person. So we really have to put a lot of attention to that our body language and our intonation is most of the communication, and so therefore it is really important that we emphasize and stress this part also to our favor in work. Let's go back to the concept of sender and receiver. Some say that the sender is 100% responsible to make sure a message is understood by the receiver. So what it is, the sender sends out a message to someone. And this someone is the person who is called receiver. So the receiver is the one who receives the message. The sender sends it, the receiver receives it. In the process of transmitting a message, the clarity of the message may be interfered or distorted by what is often referred as a barriers. So it's really important to understand that when we start sending out a message, what the receiver receives is very much a question. What is received? And there are many factors which are involved in what is received. As already mentioned, some say that the sender is 100% responsible to make sure that a message is understood by the receiver. And this is in general logical because the sender is the one who actually wants the receiver to understand the message. Therefore, the responsibility is mainly in his or her hand. The sender should make sure that the receiver receives the message properly. because this is what they want. If I call someone, normally I have an idea, a concept that I want to tell them. So if I express it in a way that my opposite cannot understand, why call them in the first place? So it's really important to know that the sender has a huge responsibility of conveying a message, transmitting a message in such a way that it can be received. But then, if both sender and receiver take care that a message is sent properly and understood properly, the chance of having a good communication is much higher. So if the receiver makes sure that he understands the message properly, and if the sender makes sure to send the message properly, the chance is high likely 100% to be understood properly. So you can see this concept. It's one of the easiest, the simplest models of communication, the sender-receiver model. So there are some steps that you can take care for, that the information that you send as a sender really can come to the receiver in such a way that it can be understood. One is, the sender should make sure that the idea or the message, the concept, is first clear in the mind. What do you want to say? Make it clear first in your mind before you communicate. It's always difficult if you communicate something and then later you have to explain it because it's not understood, and maybe on the way of explanation it even changes. So that becomes over and over more unclear. For example, let's say mother-son talk. Mother says to the son, please be so kind, take the trash down. The son says, okay, I'll do it later. Okay, if you do that later, can you also pick the milk from the shop? Mother says. The son said, oh, I don't want to go to the shop, it's really far away. Can I do it another time? Mother says, okay, then let me go for the milk. And then the son says, okay, and then I'll do something different. So let's say that was the dog. In the evening, the trash is not taken down. So the mother says, I asked you to put the trash down. Why did you take the trash down? Son says, you went for the milk. I thought you were taking it down. So just a talk. There can be a talk between wife and husband. There can be a talk between child and parent. There can be, you can put it in all sections of your communication. If the thought, the concept, the message is not clear, or if it changes during the talk, it's really difficult for the receiver to understand what is the end message, what is the end concept, what is the idea that you wanted to tell. So before sending, it's also good to break down the message into words and sentences which you know the receiver can understand. Please do not use difficult terminology if the receiver is not familiar with this terminology. For example, if you have a parent talk as an early childhood educator and you really use terminology which comes from the professional knowledge of an early childhood educator, parents might not understand it. So it can be really difficult for them to follow you if you use words which they are not understanding, like retardation and intrinsic power and all of that. So they have an idea of what that is, they might not really understand the concept. And then it's also important that you don't use words which you don't understand. So you also have to use terminologies that you clearly understand, you know the meaning of the words, so please do not want to show up smart by using words which you don't understand and thereby confusing a good communication. Also, the message has to be effective with the receiver's feel. So it is important to use a little bit of empathy to understand what the opposite is able to take in. How can you reach out to the other person? How can the other person understand your message? So if you have a very emotional person, you might want to put your message in a nice story or in a very loving, emotional intonation so that it really resonates with your listener. If you have a very logical person, if you put a lot of enthusiasm in your message, it's not really making any sense. It might even not be heard because of that lot of information. So it's important that the sender also thinks about what kind of person is the receiver that I'm speaking with. The message should always be engaging to the receiver. That's important. Make sure your receiver is receptive to your message. So if the son or the daughter is sitting in front of the television, being very concentrated on the movie going on, and you ask them to put the trash down, it's no wonder that in the evening the trash is still here. So also with children, sometimes when they are very deeply engaged in a game, in a toy, with something, in some activity, and you're really so concentrated, and you ask them maybe, oh, you didn't clean up the last play material, please can you do that? They just don't hear you because they are not really receptive to your message. Also, sometimes in very young children, you can see when they see something, they see a toy, and they're just going like this to the toy. You see already, they're so focused on the toy, and then you ask them to do something between, maybe, oh, your hands are dirty, please wash your hands before you touch the toy. They will not hear you. It's just not what they will, because their focus is somewhere else. Their attention is somewhere else. So you have to make sure the child is receptive to the message. So what could you do in that regard? You could also walk to that toy. You could take the toy in your hand so that you have it before the child comes. Then you look in the eyes of the child and say, I'll take care for that till you are ready with washing your hands. See, your hands are so dirty. Let's first wash your hands. Okay, for example. So that could be a way how you address a child to make sure that you have the receptivity and the attention of the child if you want them to do something or you want them to guide along the way. And even in a conflict, it's a really good thing to do. So be aware about the influence of body language, gesture, intonation of your voice. What do you stress? What do you emphasize? I said that already. So when you speak to a child, make always sure that your entire body language resonates with your message. For example, if there's a child comes and it shows the picture, and you look at the picture and say, yeah, you really did a good job on that. Yeah, so the child will not resonate with that. But if you say, wow, what is that? I can see there's a sun, there is some grass, I can identify all of that. What else did you draw? You did such a good job with that. Very different thing. Yeah, very different resonation of the receiver when I pronounce it properly, my face, my entire body, everything, my direction towards the child, everything is there. So my full attention is given to that moment now. So you have to make sure that the receiver is receptive for the message and be aware of your influence that you have from your side. Make also sure the message is understood. So it's how can you make sure that the message is understood? One way is that you ask the receiver to repeat what they understood. For example, you tell a story, and you need that story that you tell for the next activity with the children. So you want to make sure that the children really understood it. So when you finish your story, you might want to say, who can remember what the bird in the story did? Who can remember da-da-da, yeah? Or what did you keep in mind? What was the most exciting for you to keep in mind? What was the most scaring out of that story that you remember, whatever it was about, joyful? And then they give you feedback and you see what's happening. So that is how we would do it with the very little ones. You can also ask them to repeat the instruction if it's an instruction. For example, you speak about a rule. Okay, this is the rule in this area. We play like this, only that much children, da-da-da. You just explain. And normally what educators do is they say, did you understand me? And I'll say, yes. And then what happens is they are not really following the instructions. So if you say, okay, let us repeat together. What do you remember? How do we play here? How many children can play here? Let them repeat it, so that is how you can figure out if they really understood you. Also between colleagues, if you have some talk about what needs to be done. For example, you're leaving at noon and your colleague is staying a little longer and has to prepare something for the next morning because you need it. And you say, please, could you do this, and put it on that place for me for next morning? And your colleague says, yes. So what you know is, yes, they are willing to do it. But what you don't know is, did they really understand what you ask them or what you want them to do? So what is important in that regard is that you say, would you mind repeating what I just instructed, so that we can make sure that we really have that tomorrow morning and we do not forget the detail, and then let them repeat how they understood it. And of course, you can always write things down to underline it and to make it easier to remember. And another possibility, so questionnaire is another possibility, but also through tests. Like in schools, normally tests are in such a way that they should show what children were able to remember, to comprehend out of the knowledge given. And normally what should happen is, if you discover that not everything is understood, you should repeat that part. You shouldn't rate the child with a bad mark or grade. You should understand that the sender, the teacher, did not or has not been able to reach the receivers, the group of children, or some children in the group. Yeah, so the way how the information was given was not in such a way that the receiver was able to really understand it. So what you normally have to do, if child is negative at a test or cannot perform in a test, you would need to go back thinking about how can I better transmit the information. So we said most of the responsibility is with the sender. Some say 100% of the responsibility is with the sender. We say in other models, because that was really developed in very early times, if you look at your notes, your study paper, the year when that was found, so till then a lot of transformation development happened. And for example, what happened is also that they said, yeah, but the receiver really also plays a role, because the way how the receiver receives the information is not just the transmitter, but also what's happening in the receiver's own field, we can say. So the receiver can also help the sender so that the information is understood better. One way is by being receptive to the message that's coming in. So when one is concentrated on some work on the computer and a team colleague is asking something, you should stop that work. You should not just answer it on a side. You should stop this work and you should put your full attention to the sender of the information to make sure that you can see the face, that you can understand the body language, that you listen to the intonation in the voice, and that you can receive the information as receptive as possible. The second thing is also make sure to understand the message. So it's not just the sender's obligation to ask, did you understand me? And that should not be answered with a yes. That should be figured out what exactly was understood. It's also the receiver's responsibility to make sure that they understood the message, especially if it was an instruction. Did I understand that right? Duck, 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 duck. Then you hear yes, or yes, that part is right. This one I actually meant differently. Yeah. Okay. Did I understood it now properly? You repeat. So this is what you do. This is what you do between adults. Yeah. In adults, sender and receiver are both responsible. In children, the younger the child, the responsibility of proper communication is with the sender. Very important. So the younger child, the more responsibility the sender has to make sure that the receiver can receive the information and understand. The sender, when the child starts to develop and grow up into an older age, the sender can ask the child to also take some of the responsibility. When the child reaches adolescence, more can be given more and more. An adult should take the responsibility also on this side to make sure that whatever is communicated is surely also understood from that side as well as possible. Yeah, so this is the sender-receiver model. This is one of the basic models and one of the concepts in communication. If you know someone who would like also to have this information or where you think, oh, this is really the right video for that person, please share this information, share it with as many people as possible. If you liked the video, please give us a thumbs up, and do not forget to subscribe and to click the bell so that whenever we put something up, you get a notification. We always will upload once a week, so this is guaranteed, but sometimes if we have a lot of information, it's just coming out, I will upload more often. My team is very eager to get the information out because it's really a desire of me to give information also cost-free to early childhood educators and to parents. Not everyone is able to afford a complete workshop and a class, and they also want to grow, and so this is the possibility how we want to do that. So please don't forget also to leave your comments if you have any particular interest where you want something to know from us. Do please leave the comment, subscribe, click the bell, click the like. Okay, thank you very much for all of your support. My heart goes to you. I wish you a beautiful day.